What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Calgary Barbell. We are going to start up the training logs for these last, I think it's 5 or so weeks leading back into Worlds. We feel like this is maybe the most pertinent training, the most interesting training. It's certainly going to be the heaviest training. So we're going to take you guys along with that and get back to doing some questions of the day, hopefully dropping some decent knowledge and recapping the week's training as we go. So to start with, last week was the first week back to the block. For those who maybe didn't follow my training along on Instagram or anything like that, I had a really tough block the block before this one. And one of the biggest reasons was I tried to get back into my old equipment. However, I'm a fair bit heavier. My weight will remain a mystery, but you just couldn't use it. So the first week back in it, squat suit cut my legs, split them open. Couldn't use my deadlift suit the next day. The next week tried to use my deadlift suit and it just I couldn't use it because it was too tight. So the third week, I tweaked my back. The fourth week, we went to Texas. I got all custom stuff, measured, made to fit. And then the tail end of the Texas trip, got sick, flu, food poisoning. I think more flu because it lasted a while, but lost about 4 kilos of body weight. And then when I got back, finally got back into my new custom equipment and none of it fit because I had lost a bunch of weight. So that whole training block was pretty much just scrambling back to baseline from some unfortunate circumstance or another the whole time. Now, fast forward to this block, the getting sick, I think, forced me to focus a lot on my nutrition and my sleep, which in the long run, I think has had a net positive impact. So I'm really happy with where I'm at now. My body weight is about 1 kilo shy of where I was in Texas, but I actually feel a lot better. I don't feel as fat or as sloppy. So this week started back with some equipped squats, and I started off with pretty conservative load for everything. Now I have a planned progression, taking I think 5 kilo jumps on my squats, 2.5 kilos on my bench, and about 7.5 kilos per week on my deadlift. Basically what I did was I set my projections where I want to be at the end of the block and then worked backwards in that many steps, and that gives me this sort of roadmap to get to where I'd like to be in preparation for the competition. So I started with 350 kilos on the squat. It was 350. I felt really good, so I put 352 on for the first day, and it felt great. Titan had just got me another new suit. This one was the size that I couldn't fit when I was in Texas, so it's nice and tight. It fits perfectly right now, and big shout outs to the guys from Titan for getting me that in time for me to start my block in it. I also benched that day, worked up to a single at 227.5. I think I did 3 singles there actually. 1 touched and 2 didn't. Again, right now, one of the things I'm trying to do with my shirt is get used to jacking it to different heights. Now, I actually have a chest tattoo with lines that give me a really good sort of measuring stick, I guess, if you want to call it that, so I can set my collar to different heights. Now, the lower the collar is pulled down, generally the tougher it's going to be to get that bar down, the more carryover you're going to get. So I've been experimenting with that as I go through these bench singles, taking, okay, my first single with the collar higher, my second single with the collar a bit lower, my third single with the collar even lower. So that's affecting whether or not I'm touching these weights, and it's providing me with, I think, some valuable experience so that when I get to the meet, if I really want to jack the shirt down, it's not my first time with my shirt jacked like that. Anyways, that's day 1, so it's pretty much like an equipped meet. For anybody who's followed my training for a while, that's kind of how my equipped days go. My day 2 is my comp equipped deadlifts. Now this has been a bit of an interesting experiment over the last little while. Between the weight gain and getting back into equipment, I really didn't find my groove last block. I made a lot of overestimations. I had a hard time managing my expectations. Made some dumb jumps. I think I missed reps in my equipped deadlift, probably 70% of my sessions last block. So I made a lot of mistakes. I'm not convinced that the weight gain has been necessarily a negative thing. I am convinced that a lack of practice in my deadlift suit and my, I guess, different leverages at this point caused me to overestimate my abilities at that point. So this block, I'm starting quite conservatively. I started off with 332 kilos, if I'm not mistaken anyways, on the deadlift. So I pulled that, and then I pulled 6 singles at about 310. And again, just really practicing that setup, practicing the execution every single time, rep to rep, trying to be consistent. and sort of play with. One thing that seems to matter quite a bit for me is that foot pressure, whether I'm a little more forefoot or a little more heel, how much extension I'm pulling into the suit. All those kinds of things come into play really big. So my day 3 is essentially the beginning of the raw half of the week. Now, normally I'll have some different variations towards the end of the week, and this block I actually have mostly raw comp stuff as my accessory work. So day 3 I do my raw comp squat, and that started off in a really good place. Started with 240 kilos for a set of 4 at about a 7.5, 8 RPE, which for me is really good at this point. Did my raw comp bench, started off with a single at I believe 167.5 kilos. That was a little bit slower than I would have liked. Single was supposed to be at an 8. Felt like about an 8.5, so dialed my subsequent volume work back a little bit based on that, and also did some overhead press that day, which I am just terribly weak at. My day 4, I did some deadlifts, mid-range pin press, and RDLs, and we'll get some footage of those for next week. So we got 2 more little things for you here. We're gonna do album of the week. So my recommendation for album of the week is the album Absolute by Kublai Khan. They're a band from Texas I had the pleasure of seeing a little while ago. And honestly, I hadn't really listened to them much before that other than hearing their name here and there. But holy crap, did they ever put on an amazing live show. Immediately just drawn right into the music, and have been a big fan since, I guess. So if you get the chance, check that out. I'm gonna give that 4.5 screaming Bryce heads out of 5. Real solid album, great production, and just straight bangers. Amazing group, amazing band. And that's gonna be it for today, so thank you everybody for tuning in. If you're interested in following along with my journey towards IPF Open Worlds in Dubai here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up if you liked it, and make sure to tune in next week when I wrap up next week's training. All right, take care everybody.